9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. 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 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Clear tower. Roger tower.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. It's Saturday, July 27th, 2024. I'm Doug. This is Matt, and joining us today, Sam Tourville, fellow MUFON member and CE5 experiencer. Welcome, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Got your name right this time. I typed it in wrong and sent the invite to someone else. So if somebody else pops in, we'll just talk to them too.
Yeah,
so,
that's good.
How's it going today, Sam?
Doing well. Thank you, Doug. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good.
We're living the dream.
Yes.
The UFO dream.
Well, you guys are just such a cute couple.
We are.
Thanks.
I didn't think you'd notice, but yeah.
We got the space behind us too.
We have our spaceship.
You guys are located right there.
Yeah.
Is that a cockpit from any particular?
No, it's just a
Usually?
random. It's a random cockpit. My wife actually bought me the backdrop. The last one was just a little smaller, but because it's Matt and I, it has to be big.
Yes, that's right.
And able to fit us in.
Widescreen today.
Yeah.
Fit us into the ship. Yeah, so it's working out pretty good. This is actually the first time we've used it. We used it last week. We had the, Bob Pullen from the group and Elise. And Elise and
I missed. I'm gonna have to watch that show. I forgot that you guys were having them on.
Make sure you watch it to the end.
No,
Yeah.
don't do that. Don't do that.
I love those guys.
They're awesome. So tell us a little bit about how you got into all this, kind of your history of. I could kind of like when we have a guest, where this all started with you.
Okay, again, my name is Sam Tourville. I'm California's premier authority on CE5 and transdimensional events, mostly because I don't know of anybody else that's claimed that title. And so I grabbed it, and, I'm going to keep it until somebody else claims to be an expert.
He's got the belt.
Until somebody's a senior.
Yeah.
That's
right. Yeah.
Now, I don't claim to be an expert on anything. I have personal experiences. I've done quite a bit of research on a few different things, both paranormal and extraterrestrial. I have had the pleasure of being able to interview or know personally quite a few people that have had amazing experiences. At one time, for a short time, I was a director at the Warren Legacy Foundation. That was Ed and Lorraine Warren's grandson. His group of paranormal investigators. Unfortunately, I had a fallout with them, but I was at one time creating a division for them that was dealing with the CE5. It was one of the things that we were going to be doing, and it was also going to be teaching their investigators how to look at the transdimensional and alien aspect that they were running into in a lot of their paranormal investigations. They were finding, and I don't know if it was more awareness or just more occurrences, but they were finding a lot of tie-ins with the paranormal experiences and UFO or actual alien visitations, and so we were looking at that. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. But like I said, I'm not an expert on anything, but I have been into this for quite a while, and I'm really interested. CE5, maybe I should define that real quick. CE5 is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Fairly new term. I can't remember who actually coined it, but Stephen Greer is the one that is most famously associated with it. And basically, what it means, it is human initiated contact with alien intelligence. That's the real quick and easy definition, and it's usually done psychically. Um, I believe this is actually something that has been done for thousands and thousands of years. I believe that the shamans in older cultures, this is what they were doing through meditation, sometimes through hallucinogenics, uh, sweat lodges with the American Indians, that they were putting themselves into a state where they could basically separate their consciousness from their body and make contact with higher intelligence, alien intelligence, transdimensional intelligence, however you want to put it. I'm not big uh, on strict definitions. I think a lot of things people kind of get divided on because of specifics. Um, labeling things to me, it all, so much of it just kind of all fits in together, and whatever you want to call it is fine with me. Like, God, if you want to, however you want to define God or call God, or if you want to call it, the universe. If you kind of step back and look at it, everybody's kind of doing the same thing. They just have their own way of doing it. So I try not to get caught up too much in the semantics.
Do people get upset if they have views that are different from others? Because I generally just
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
do
you.
people get upset if their views differ from, if somebody else's views differ from
What
theirs?
do you mean, you people? You mean like short people? Is that what you mean? Are you prejudiced against short people?
I'm married to one.
Then you know it's trouble, right? You don't want to upset
Short
us.
people-
You don't want to get on our bad
Short
side.
people are
Because
cool.
we'll take out your shoelaces.
No, it's just I don't. I
Kick in the
listen
shin.
to one of the reasons we have this, and we excel at it as we do right now.
Exactly.
Is that we to listen to everyone's outlook, and I don't, because I have a certain. I don't anchor myself to any specific
Same.
reasoning at all. I just listen. I take it all in and try to sort it all out, if you will.
Yeah. See, I have my, I have my beliefs, my thoughts, my theories and such. I'm. It's pretty fluid. There are some things that I believe pretty solidly in, but there's nothing really that I believe in so strongly that, like, overwhelming evidence or a really good argument couldn't change my mind on.
What do you believe solidly in, Sam? What are the solid?
That I don't know anything, that I don't know everything.
Other than that,
Right?
how am I going to make fun of you if you take that?
To me, it's all a work in progress.
It is.
One of the things, and we can get, I'd love to get into this, is consciousness.
Yeah.
For me, consciousness, my personal definition is the intelligent, energetic part of yourself that lives on once the physical body dies.
Right.
Yeah.
And many people would call that a soul. A lot of the people that call that a soul wouldn't agree with my definition. That doesn't bother me, because, tell me what your definition of a soul is. Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. I'm just putting it in a different way. When you get to afterlife, that gets a little trickier because there's definitely more of a religious aspect in there. But to me, consciousness really is the key to a lot of this. CE5, you are sending out this intention that you want to contact alien intelligence, and the answer can be it can be lights in the sky. It can be, a vehicle. It can be something on the ground. I'll tell you about I'll tell you about a few of my experiences in a little bit. But uh, it's basically it's done psychically, right? And what is psychic ability? I really believe that it is your consciousness untethering itself from your body. Your body is an anchor. It limits your consciousness, and it's not okay. You know what? I don't really like that. I it's more than just your body holding your consciousness back. It's social condition. I believe that most of us are told at an early age that magic isn't real, right?
Right.
Magic isn't real; it's play. And there's still tons of skepticism over psychic abilities, and all of this. And as an adult, you're not supposed to believe in all of that stuff. But I believe like magic, like true magic, a true psychic ability, it's all connected to the consciousness. So that's one of the things I believe firmly in. But again, I truly believe that I don't know everything.
What happens when you die, Sam? I want to know. Don't you know?
Okay, so
We want answers right now.
I believe that when you die, that your consciousness is detached from your body, and I think that at that point, your consciousness is aware of any other past lives that you've lived. I think that that's one of the things that our physical body makes it very difficult for us to be aware of is past lives. I think the consciousness isn't bound by linear time and three-dimensional space. So this is one thing that I get into trouble with a lot of people in the spiritual realm. A lot of people believe that there's no such thing as time, and I disagree with that. For me, I use a lot of logic uh, in my thoughts, and it's like, okay, so we know that there are heavy elements here on Earth that weren't created on Earth. There are heavy elements here on Earth that could, at least if science is correct, could only have been created in supernova explosions, right? Those supernova explosions occurred so long ago that if we knew where to look and put a telescope in the right spot, we could spot them. But for all intents and purposes, we don't know. We will never observe the supernova that seeded the Earth with, and it was probably, it was multiple supernovas, but we'll never see those that seeded the Earth with the heavy elements. But again, if science is correct, these elements are here because of these supernovas.
Right.
So what happens when you die, Sam?
I'm getting to that. To me, that's proof of I ramble. So to me, that's proof of linear time, right? Linear time. You had a star that started as a cloud, condensed, rotated, fired up, fusion, and ended up in an explosion, which created these elements that were spread out in the universe, and they ended up here on Earth. That's linear. You can't go backwards from that. You can't go backwards from it. I think it's consciousness when it's untethered, and there are people that practice and can untether their consciousness while they're alive.
Yeah.
That it's the consciousness that is not bound by linear time or three-dimensional space, and that's how you are able to do things like remote viewing. So I believe that after you die, your consciousness has a choice of what do you want to do. Again, this is I do not have firm beliefs in this. I'm still learning. Some information that I've got that I like is that there are higher dimensional beings that will basically sit with your consciousness and go over the the karmic lessons that you were supposed to learn in that lifetime. And if you didn't learn all of them, then you are given the choice to go into another body and continue to try to learn those lessons.
So you're talking about a soul, right? The thing that
Exactly.
leaves your body. They've
Yes.
weighed people before as they die. They had, I don't know when they did this, and the
Ounces.
body has it's grams. It's like not it's, but as the soul, the story
Yes.
is, the soul leaves the body, and it's actually the body weighs.
I'm not
less.
100% convinced that was a true experiment or not, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's compelling, but
but-
it's
Was it
Yeah,
gas?
for me, the soul and consciousness is the same thing. Consciousness is the soul while you're still alive.
Have you heard of the I'm going to interject, because I do this. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
On the far side of the moon, there's a structure. It's like a box, and there's a theory that the soul. I know this is wild. The souls.
I haven't heard that one.
The souls actually our soul leaves our body. It goes there, and then it waits. Are the helicopters
They're
here?
coming now. See what you did?
The soul leaves the body, it goes there, and I guess it waits there until it needs for another fetus or something gets shoved into. I don't know, but it's interesting.
That was a little
I love.
wild, but-
You're going to hear a lot of crazy
A
stuff
little
if you
wild.
hang around with me.
A little while.
Yeah, yeah.
But see,
It's,
okay. Now, like the idea that there's a box on the other side of the moon, that to me is a little out there. But the idea that the soul waits around until it's ready to be reborn,
Is
that I can get into. And to kind of continue along that line, I think that the eventual goal of the soul or the consciousness, which is how I look at it, is to evolve and to learn these karmic. Some people say karmic lessons, some people say cosmic lessons, but basically to evolve to the point where it is a godlike consciousness. And so I don't know. It's been a while since I've really delved into this or discussed it with anybody.
I had a guy on a couple weeks ago about the afterlife, and he says that your soul leaves your body, and you go into another plane of existence, and you reappear as you're in a physical. It's not really physical, but you come back in your prime, and then you wait there until it's time to, and you've learned these, like axe murder. I go, what happens when an axe murderer goes there? And he goes, well, the other people feel that aura that he has, but he's not an axe murderer in this realm. And then you wait there till you go back, and you can either go back or you can go into another level, which is the more of the godlike thing that you were just talking about. I think there's some similarity to
One thing I have you guys, have either of you read the Raw Chronicles, The Law of One?
No,
No.
I haven't read.
That's a book I highly recommend. It's called The Raw Chronicles, The Law of One. You can actually get it free. The publishers offer free PDF download, but I like the books because the information in it, some of it is so mind-blowing that I have to read it 2 or 3 times before I really grasp it. Hold on, I'll grab one of the books to show you real quick.
Yeah.
okay. You said Raw Chronicles?
Let me get a little water while he's doing that.
Raw.
It's not raw like the sun, is it? Need water? Anything?
No, I'm good.
It's highly professional and stuff.
The Raw. Okay.
Like the Ra expedition.
The Raw.
Interesting.
Okay. Teaching the law.
It's like
of
the
one.
Egyptian Ra, the god of Ra.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this book, it's a series of there's 100 and something. Yeah, I think it's 100 and something sessions uh, where this group was uh, this actually a woman in this group, um, and I'm going to say supposedly was channeling um, uh, this intelligence that called itself Ra. It claimed to be a collective intelligence from the planet Venus, and that it had visited Earth before under the name Ra and had worked with the Egyptians to help build the pyramids. Now, some people you can believe that part or not. Um, Channeling, to me, I don't trust all channeling. I definitely believe that channeling is possible. I think it's also possible for people to fool themselves. And then also, even if it's real channeling and you're getting information from a consciousness, an intelligence that's not your own, I think it's also possible to misinterpret the information. So I do take a lot of things with a grain of salt. But there's mind-blowing information in this, mind-blowing concepts. Let me put it that way: mind-blowing concepts in there, whether the information is true or not. Mind-blowing concepts in there. But there's also okay. So I would recommend this book to anybody because it talks about a way of living, a way of thinking about life that is beautiful and can apply to anybody. And basically, what it comes down to is um, uh, uh, being a service to others or service to self. So, in the book, the idea is that if you live a life uh, in service to others, that will help your soul to evolve. And eventually, and in this book, what they talk about is like the development of the soul is something that happens over not just thousands of years, but tens of thousands of years, possibly even hundreds of thousands of years, to eventually reach the point where you are now part of what some people would call God, other people would call the divine universe. But basically, you're, according to them, your soul eventually evolves to the point where it is conscious, aware of everything, which is, uh, you know, a God state.
Right.
But there's a lot of really good information in there. Like I remember just reading the first few chapters, and the way that it's set up is it's broken down into the different sessions, and some sessions are only a few paragraphs long, and some of the sessions are pages long. But in the very beginning, they're asking this entity a lot of very interesting questions, like questions about Bigfoot, and the answers are coming bang, 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 bang.
Nice.
Again, you can choose to believe it or not, but if you think of it as concepts as opposed to information, there's a lot of really, at the very least, there's a lot of really interesting concepts in there. But the way of living that they talk about is absolutely beautiful. And I need to get back to that because when I was consciously living in that way, uh, I was a lot happier. But yeah, but they definitely talk a lot about souls and soul development, and I like that concept that the soul develops. And in the book, they talk about how at the end of a life, this is where I got that information from. At
Right.
the end of life, that these higher dimensional beings sit with your soul and they go over the lessons that you learned or that you should have learned. And when the soul is ready to be reborn, according to them, it actually chooses the circumstances of your birth. It chooses the body and it chooses how your life is going to um, sort of play out, the challenges that you will encounter in your life in order to trigger the learning. Um,
I feel like I'm gonna disappoint the crap out of them when I get to that point.
You're just at a lower level, Matt. You haven't reached the pinnacle of your consciousness.
That's one concept I have a big problem with in this book, is the concept that like there's no good and evil.
Right. Well, there's balance. You have to have both. Because you can't have one without the other. Right?
What would good even mean if you didn't have evil?
It has to be balanced.
You know, I mean,
life is about balance.
Yeah, I still have a problem with that, man. I want to fight. I want to fight the good fight. You know,
That's good.
Okay, so I didn't really state that right. It's not that there's no good or evil, but that like you said, there has to be a balance. You're not, that evil is not supposed to be eradicated from the universe. That it has to be allowed to exist.
Right.
Yeah, I still have issues with that.
Me and my stepdad had long hours of conversation about that. He was very religious. I'm not. I'm more spiritual, and he could not get over that there had to be both.
Yeah.
I mean, God made both.
So here's something that was really interesting in the book. So in the book they talk about levels of consciousness, right? And like I believe we're in the third level of humans are in the third level. Second level would be animals. First level would be
Close to that.
Vegetation and such. And then humans have the ability to evolve into this fourth level of consciousness. But in the higher levels of consciousness, there's no longer a need for a physical body. And it talks about how living a path of service to self, being selfish, not caring about what you're doing to other people, that you can actually, your soul can progress through these different levels on that path up to a point. Once you, but it's like I can't remember the level, but it's something like the 7th level you can get to, which in our, or let me say in my concept would put you pretty close to like godlike status. So for me, God is everything, right? And this is even in the Bible, that God created of himself everything. Everything comes from God. God is everything. Omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, right? God is everything. And for me, I thought about this decades ago, but it's like, well, it kind of ties into the Big Bang, right? The Big Bang says that at one point, everything was an ultra dense, ultra high energy ball.
Right.
And it expanded out. And as it expanded out, the different forces were not really created, but dropped out. The energy states were lower, that these were able to manifest.
Yep.
And eventually you got protons, neutrons, electrons, which formed atoms. But all of it started from a point where the energy levels were so high, and the energy density was so high that it was just a soup. It was homogeneous. It was one.
Right.
And then it eventually expanded, and it led to the creation of everything. Why couldn't that singularity that was the Big Bang, why couldn't that have been God? Now, you could argue whether or not it had consciousness, whether it had intelligence, but if you just kind of look at it from the scientific aspect, for me, they tie in perfectly well with the Bible.
Yeah.
So for me, there's God, which is everything. The divine, infinite creator is what I usually say when I put that into my prayers. And for me, that the concept of that is everything. God, and in the Bible, God is in everything, right? And then there are also godlike beings, uh, higher consciousness beings, um, that have evolved souls. So in this book, um, you can get to something like the seventh level, which would be godlike status in our thinking, able to transcend time and space.
Sounds like Scientology.
But
Almost. Almost.
but to get to the point where you can merge with the divine infinite creator and be part of everything, at that point you have to switch over to the service to others path. And yes, it's a really interesting book.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, whether you believe that it was actually channeled or not, whether you believe the information in there is true or not, there's a lot of really interesting concepts that get you thinking.
Do you go to church, Sam?
I haven't for a while. I used to. I haven't for a while.
Are you more spiritual than?
Yeah, I would definitely say more spiritual.
Yeah.
I mean, I do believe in God. I do believe in Jesus Christ. I believe that Jesus Christ was a living man. I think that he had.
Was he ripped? Was he ripped?
I think he was handsome.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Did pull-ups on the cross.
Yeah, stop it.
But I believe in a lot of the Bible. I don't believe everything in the Bible. Man, we are way off on a tangent. We got
That's right.
This is what this show is all about.
That's exactly.
No problem. So for
Everything
me,
weird.
And again, I have a very logical brain. So for me, the Bible, I don't take the Bible word for word, because I know some of the history of it. There was no, after the time, if you believe in Jesus Christ, after he died and rose and all that, his disciples went out and they taught, and they established their individual churches. And the beliefs in those individual churches weren't exactly the same as each other, right? They weren't exactly in conflict, but the Church of Paul did not practice and preach the exact same way that the other churches preached, right? And that's when the books of the apostles were, either written or they were written afterwards about these churches and the preachings and such. And they don't exactly align. The Bible that we have nowadays was actually canonized by the Roman Catholic Church, right? There were many more books that were out there, the Gnostic books. There were more books written by women that were out there, and it was the Catholic Church that chose which books would be canonized with the Old Testament into the Bible. And I believe that the Roman Catholic Church is an extension of the Roman Empire, that the Roman Empire still lives through the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
The Roman Empire was one of the smartest things that they would do would be when they conquered a country or a culture, civilization, they would incorporate that civilization's religion and culture, and they would mix it with Roman culture instead of eliminating it and replacing it with Roman culture. And I believe that's what they did. They did the same thing with Christianity, that they manipulated the Bible in order to and created the church in order to maintain power. So I get in a lot of trouble with people that are religious over that, because they're told that the Bible is the word of God and you have to believe every word. And I go to, well, it was translated from ancient Hebrew to Greek to Latin and eventually to English. And anytime you translate words from one language to another, you're going to lose some of the meaning.
Yep.
It's like that saying where you have a group of people in a room and you tell somebody something and it gets to the front of the room and it's something completely different.
Telephone. So the telephone game.
Yeah. So, So, like I said, I believe a lot of the Bible. I believe a lot of the Bible was anecdotal. but over time became the anecdotal stories became to be believed as true stories. I believe there is true stories in there as well.
Right.
I believe there's a lot of good teachings. Um, I'm of the idea that the base of religion, the concept of any religion, is a good thing, but the establishment of the churches and the control of thought is where you run into trouble.
Right. I agree.
Do you have any problem with the one nation under God thing? My wife has a huge problem with that.
That's
You know,
church and state, right?
Yeah.
Well, see, I think the concept of church and state is what a lot of people think today really isn't true. The the founders said that the the government shall not establish a national church, and it shall not prevent you from worshiping as you choose, and it shall not force you to worship any certain way. And that was it. I don't think that it ever said that there cannot be religion and government. And you can see from the very beginning of the United States government, there was incorporation of Christian religion into government.
Right.
So I don't think that you should force like children to say,
The Pledge of Allegiance.
yeah, well, the Pledge of Allegiance is different,
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't seem okay.
but if like a child chooses not to say the God part, you can't force them to.
Right.
But again, I think it's gone just a little bit too far, and people nowadays think freedom of religion is freedom from religion,
Right.
and that you have the right to tell other people that they can't practice publicly because it offends you, and that's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So CE5.
Yeah. Well, that's
Back to CE5. Well, I'm going to ask you did the CE5 thing with our group up in Lotus. How did that? I never did hear. Did anything happen?
Well, that's not really the best location to do something like that because what we're trying to do is a group meditation, and you have a public park.
Is that the same place we went?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's where we've done the
I
Star Watch.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a public
too much
park, and you've
stuff.
got the road right there. So there's a lot of
Distractions.
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of distractions. And that was what was happening is while we were trying to do the meditations, cars were going by, people were walking around.
In the parking lot, it's right
Yeah.
there.
We should do our own. I know that location at Deer Valley Road, I think, up in Cameron Park.
Did I tell you about that one?
You discuss it, and I've actually been there before.
Okay.
I've been there
Yeah.
during the day, not at night, but I can imagine it's
It's
a little
secluded?
park. It's a little park that not too many
Okay,
people
don't
know.
honestly, I don't want you to give too many details about it.
doesn't
Okay, all right, everybody
Yeah.
will go now. Yeah, okay,
Yeah, I
never
don't want
mind.
that information to get out there because I don't want it to get overrun. But yes, I have done several there, and it is an awesome location,
Oh,
and I've got very good results.
okay.
Yeah, we should do that with us. Make
Yeah.
another splinter group.
Sure.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think that the group was a little bit too big and just not cohesive enough.
How many people is it? Like 25, 30?
Oh yeah, we had like 30 people.
That's a lot.
Wow, that
That's
was
a
more
lot.
than when we went there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was a big turnout, and it turned out to be a Star Watch party, which was fine.
Right.
But yeah, just
Yeah.
too many distractions, and I think just not enough cohesion in the group.
Yeah, let's do our own at the other
Yeah,
location.
I think that's a really good idea, and in fact, I'm thinking about doing it later this year.
Yeah, I mean, not too late because I want to freeze my butt off.
I'll bring the mosquitoes.
I don't like the cold. I'm very wussy like that.
I'll bring the
I tell
mosquitoes.
you, okay, so CE5. So
Yeah.
okay, so I forgot most of the stuff we talked about before we started recording.
Right.
That's-
Right.
So that's why I said don't use up all
Right.
your good stuff before we start. I used to do
I'm
it
sorry, I was thinking we had already talked about this stuff. We did, but
we did.
Right.
It wasn't recorded. So
I wrote
Okay.
it down.
Yeah,
so
next-
we're covered.
that's why I always tell people don't use up your stuff. Just start recording.
Yep.
all right. So my background. So You guys wanted to stop and start recording again?
No,
No,
that's
but
okay.
I do want to ask, what kind of work do you do, or do you just
Uh, I right now, my career, what I did most of my life was as a server, and I actually owned a restaurant for about 10 years.
Nice.
I actually started off as a cook, owned a restaurant for 10 years, divorced, sold the restaurant, and was a server for years and years. Got out of that. What I do now is uh, in-home care for adults with disabilities.
No, okay, that's good.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
food service is actually the last occupation I think I would ever want to do.
I cooked in a restaurant.
I really enjoyed it. I loved owning a restaurant.
People and their
Yeah.
food.
I cooked for
I,
14
I,
years.
I was in Cameron Park and just a lot of good people there. I had very few bad
What?
experiences.
Oh, you were. I lived in Cameron Park. What restaurant did you have?
I used to have Thai style fine dining, which was in Burke Junction.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I've been there. Oh,
Yeah. I
interesting.
owned that from 2006 to 2016.
Really?
Wow.
No.
10 years?
No, 96 to 2006, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, 96 to 2006.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Did you ever eat at that Mexican food place in Berks Junction?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that
Um,
place.
yeah, that's been there forever. That's they've got great food. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
All right, so a little bit background on me. Uh, so I was always interested in science fiction and fantasy as a kid. Nothing abnormal, you know. Most boys were.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
all of
had
us.
a few, just a couple psychic experiences. Like I remember, I think I was still in grade school, maybe it was in junior high school, but I remember having a prophetic dream, nothing amazing, but we were in San Diego where my sister lived, and we were going to be going to Magic Mountain. We had never been there before. And in my dream, I was in the car and I was looking out the window and I was just looking at the scenery, and there was trees that were near the road, and then they moved away from the road and a grove opened up and they came back and there was mountains in the background. And sure enough, we drove by that exact same spot the next day,
That's
and I'd
crazy.
never been on
Wow.
that road before. So again, like nothing, incredible, but it was, it was like, wow, I
Yeah.
recognized it. I was like, wow, this was in my dream last night.
Little
Um,
sprinkles.
so never really had any paranormal experiences or seeing UFOs or anything that I could verify, because I've seen lights in the sky, but nothing that I could say for sure, right? And if I can't, if I don't know for sure, I'm going to dismiss it. But um, let's see. I think it was before my daughter was born, so about 17 years ago. I was driving to work. I was in El Dorado Hills and driving from north to south, and the road used to undercut the Highway 50 there. And I was approaching that, and I'm just driving along, and for no reason that I can explain, I looked up into the corner, upper left corner of my windshield, and I looked right at a silver globe hovering above the highway, at the top of that hill, just before you get the Bass Lake Road
Yeah,
turnoff.
by Silva Valley over there.
Yeah, yeah, I was on Silver
Yeah,
Valley,
yeah.
exactly. And I looked straight at it. And so like I said, I don't know why I looked straight at it, but it was about that big, right? It was about that big. It wasn't that big.
It was
Uh,
glowing.
no, it was okay. So when I first saw it, it was about that big, and it was about three-quarters the length of the cars at that distance. So my estimate is it was about 9 feet in diameter, and that is about three-quarters of a mile to a mile away from Silver Valley Road to the top of that hill. And it was about 300 feet, maybe 400 feet above the highway. It wasn't that high. It was hovering just above the highway. As I'm looking at it, it's like I zoomed in on it. My vision zoomed in on it, like telescoped in on it, because I started seeing it as a much larger object and I could see that it was perfectly polished. It's like it was just, that's the only way I can describe it. It was perfectly polished. It was silver, a shiny silver metallic, and it had like a rainbow iridescence to it. It's the only way I can, that's the best word I can describe is
Right.
iridescence.
Yeah.
It was so perfectly polished that there was a very thin, and I still can't believe that I was able to see these details.
Details.
I think somehow there was a psychic connection. That's the only explanation that I have of being able to see these details from this distance, because I saw like a very thin jet black crescent along the right edge, which the only explanation I can think of was the shadow of the sun, which was off somewhere to the right of it. Within a couple of seconds of me seeing this, it does this. It zooms off to the right and back to the left, maybe about 60, 80 feet to the right, and about 10 feet down, and about another 60, 80 feet to the left, and about 10, 20 feet down. And it was like dead stop, boom, boom. And then a few
Wow.
seconds later, it went boom, boom, and then it shot off to the right, and there's that hill to the right there. It shot off over that hill so fast that a second and a half later, I couldn't see it anymore. It just, it was gone. And the other thing is, I can't believe didn't wreck my car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Because the whole thing lasted about
It's
maybe
fast.
6 seconds.
Right.
I think. Let's see. I saw it. It moved. 6, 7 seconds, something like that. 8 at the most.
Right.
I was not looking at the road. I was staring at that thing the whole time.
Wow.
But it's straight there, and I was just like, wow.
What
There
was
was
that?
There was no sound. But again, it was a mile away.
Right. You put me in
It was a mile
heard
away.
it.
But there was no wings. There was no flight surfaces on it. There was no obvious propulsion
What
on
time
it.
was this?
This was the middle of the day.
Oh, so it's a day
Sorry,
sighting.
I forgot to say that.
Yeah.
So it was a summer day.
Day sighting.
I don't. I never wrote down when it was, but it was either, I think it was either July or August.
What year?
And it was about 17 years ago.
Okay.
18 years ago.
Okay.
Um, and it was the middle of the day. It was a beautiful sunny day. And I saw it clear as day,
That's
and
crazy.
it lasted, like I said, 7, 8 seconds. It wasn't something I glimpsed out of the corner of my eye. It wasn't something I saw for a second. I watched this thing, and it just blew me away. Um, I didn't tell anybody about it. I told my wife at the time when I got home about it, and she believed me, but it was just amazing. And I didn't have any other significant UFO experiences after that for quite a while. But after that, the paranormal activity at my house started,
Great.
and I can't remember how long after this, but sometime after this, my wife's father passed away, and that ramped up the paranormal activity at my house again. We were experiencing so many weird things. Like, have you heard of phantom raindrops?
No, I haven't heard that. Have you heard
Okay.
that?
Yeah, where water just kind of appears out of nowhere. Yes.
Yep. So the
Yeah,
first time it happened,
I've had it happen actually.
You have? Okay,
Yeah.
it's wild, right?
Yeah.
So the first time it happened, we were in our dining area, and a drop of water hit my arm, hit my forearm, and I looked down, and it was like a big drop of water hit my arm, and I'm like, what the heck? And I look up the ceiling, I'm like, oh man, we got a leak.
Drip. Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh geez, if there's a leak, I better take care of this. I knew it's a one-story house, so I knew there weren't pipes up there, but we have a swamp cooler, and I'm like, oh, if that swamp cooler is leaking, it's on it's halfway down the
The
roof.
wall, yeah, it's
If
coming.
it's leaking that all the way over here,
That's
that's not
bad.
good. But I looked at the first thing I did actually was I looked at the ceiling and I didn't see any water on the ceiling. And I went and I felt it and I didn't feel any water on the ceiling. I had grabbed a paper towel and I wiped it on the ceiling and
To
I couldn't
see.
come up with any moisture at all.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
okay, this is really weird. So I went up into the attic and I started looking around and I can't find
Nothing.
signs of water anywhere. No new signs, no old signs.
Yeah.
And I crawl all the way back to where the swamp cooler is. I don't find anything. And I'm like, man, I don't know what that was. My wife was in the room when it happened. She saw the water hit my arm, right? And she saw me brush it off
React.
my arm. Well, after that, every once in a while, sometimes a couple of times in a day, sometimes a couple of days would go by, but pretty frequently it was happening where I would see the water drop on the table. And most of the time it was in that room, but sometimes it was other places. My wife got hit. Uh, I can't remember where, but I remember a water drop landed on her. My stepdaughter, I saw a water drop land on her.
Wow.
And one time, like I said, most of the time was happening in that living room, but
Right.
it was happening in other places as well. One time I actually saw the drop appear.
And fall?
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's
It
crazy.
was about 2 or 3 feet below the ceiling. I
Yeah.
don't know why I was looking up there.
Right.
Maybe a drop had already fallen. I think that was it. A drop had already fallen. And so I looked up and I actually saw the drop, and it was about this big,
Right.
appear 2 feet below the ceiling
And
and
then
then
fall.
Oh, that's crazy.
like,
Wow.
That's cool.
and there was other things that were going on. Some of them I'm not 100% sure of, but my ex, she had this little jukebox alarm clock thing that was from Greece, so it played some of the Greece music. And I was working restaurants at the time, so a lot of times I wouldn't get home till 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night on a Friday or Saturday. So I was used to staying up late. And I remember one night I was on the computer, probably on Facebook. I think I was new to Facebook at that time, so I was spending a lot of time on it. And this alarm went off at like 2:30 in the morning, but the music was completely distorted, right? It would
Oh, wow.
I like that.
yeah, so I turned it off, right? I turned it off. I'm like, oh, yeah, that was creepy, but whatever. The next night, the same thing happens, right? I'm like, at 2:30 in the morning, I'm like, okay, there's got to be an alarm that's set on there, and the batteries are dying, or something,
Right.
right? So, no, actually, I'm sorry. After the first time, I thought there has to be an alarm set on there. Batteries are dying, so I replaced the batteries in it. I checked the alarms. There were no alarms set, and the alarms that were programmed in there, none of them were for 2:30 in the morning.
Oh.
But I'm thinking, okay, this thing is kind of old. The electronics are going wacky on it. But then it did it again. The second night it did it again, 2:30 in the morning, and it was really creepy. So I just took the batteries out of that, and I think I actually threw it away. But that's something. There could be a logical explanation for that.
Yeah.
But
That's
with all
still
the other
cool.
things that were going on in the house, I took a trip to South Africa with a group of friends at that time. While I was gone, my ex had gone into the garage, and when she was in the garage, she said she heard a woman's voice like right next to her ear, like an old woman say her name, but she said it wrong. Um, her name was Diane, and the spirit said Diana. She did not set foot inside that
No, really?
garage again until I came back. So, okay, so let's see. I'm trying to think what else was going on around that time. Oh, okay. So probably my most significant paranormal experience. We had gone down to Napa where my family lives for a birthday party. Well, I think it was one of the kids. Now, as we get back, I'm hauling the kid, picking the kids up and getting them into the house, bringing in the presents and stuff. And my last trip out to the truck to clear the truck out, as I'm walking down, we lived on a little street that ended on both ends. It didn't extend past the cross streets on either end. So not a lot of traffic on our little street.
Right.
And so I'm walking down and I notice motion and I look up and right at the junction of the two neighbors across from us, because our properties didn't exactly line up, from my driveway, just a little bit to the right was the property line. But right at that property line, I see a big dude. And I used to wrestle, and back when I wrestled, I became really good at judging people's heights and weights. I was pretty accurate. Like I could usually be within 5 pounds of somebody's weight
Right.
and within an inch of somebody's height, if not nailing it on a regular basis. Like Matt, I know that you're about 5'3" and about 235 pounds, right?
Thank you.
That's
That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you. That's it.
That's all the time we have tonight, folks.
Yes. Have a good night.
Back to the circus.
So I see this motion, and it appears at first is somebody dressed in black that's running down the street, and he's big. He's like 6'2" and around 260, 65, 70 pound range. Bulky, not fat, but large. But within a second or two, there's a few things that I noticed. There's no motion of arms or legs. It's jet black, and there's no tone. There's no change in tone. It's
Right.
the same solid jet black from head to toe. There's no color.
Oh,
There's
wow.
no lightening or darkening. It's one jet black shade.
Like a shadow.
Yep. And it was like a black cardboard cutout being pulled on a rail along the edge of the street. Right at it was moving right along the edge of the property lines and the street. And I can see it from head to toe. Now, I was watching,
Was he running towards you?
no, it was running across the street.
Run. Okay.
So it's running from left to right.
Right.
Now, I was totally into watching Ghost Adventures, and I watched a few other shows, but I like Ghost Hunters. I didn't like. It was like, what was that?
Right.
Everything was a sound in the distance, and they never came up with any evidence.
They got the chair that's got a string attached to it across the room.
And the
Old circus
flashlight
tricks.
thing, turning the flashlight on to the point where it's kind of on, kind of off, and asking questions. I don't believe in that stuff. That's easily explained away. But Ghost Adventures seem to get a lot of good EVPs
Right.
and good video evidence. So I was watching that quite a bit. So I knew about shadow figures, and I knew that there's the runner. There's the shadow man, there's the runner, and there's the hat man. And this was the runner. From the second I saw it, it was moving. I actually saw this thing move all the way across two properties.
Oh,
I
wow.
measured it out afterwards. It was 85 feet that I was watching this thing the whole time.
Was it
And
slow?
was,
Was it moving
Huh?
fast? Was it moving fast or
he was
slow?
running at like a
Like a
kind of a
jo-
fast jog speed,
Right.
right? Like I could have ran faster than
Right,
it,
right.
but it was like if I was back in shape and I was running a couple of miles, that would have been about the speed that I was running at.
Okay.
It was like a 7-minute mile speed, 8-minute mile, 7-minute mile speed, something like that.
Right.
It was a decent jog, right? But so my first thought before I noticed these things was like somebody broke into somebody's house. That's why he's dressed in black.
Right.
And that's like away.
He was leaving.
But then, like I said, I realized the first thing I realized is there's no arms and legs moving.
Right.
It was like a cardboard cutout.
Just right.
Exactly. And then, and it was 2-dimensional. It was not 3-dimensional. And part of the reason I know that is because, like, if you take say a playing card or anything, that's basically 2-dimensional,
Right.
and you hold it away from you,
Right.
and you move it, you see that the angle changes, right, as
Yep.
it moves away.
Yeah.
That's what was happening with this. The angle was changing as it was moving away.
Right.
And at the end of the second property, there was bushes that were near the street, and when it reached the shadow of those bushes, it disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And then I swear, 2 seconds later, my ex-wife's first husband came around the corner in his truck to pick up his kids, and that his lights shone down the street, and of course there was nothing. But I
Right.
already knew that it
It was
disappeared
gone.
shadows.
Right.
So
Crazy.
I
Wow.
didn't feel any fear, but I've had friends point out that maybe if it was running at you, you would have felt
That would have
different.
been
Yeah,
different. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
definitely.
you're right. If it was running at me, it probably would have felt different. But I didn't feel any fear. I don't know if it knew. I don't know if it was aware of my presence or not. I have the feeling that I was meant. No, actually, I take that back. At the time, I had the feeling I wasn't meant to see it. That it's like I caught it, and I wasn't supposed to. Like
Right.
most people aren't able to see it, but I was able to see it. I really wasn't supposed to.
Nice.
Uh, I think that it could not have disappeared until it reached shadow. But if it had changed direction, it could have moved into the neighbor's yard and reach shadow of a tree or a bush much sooner than staying along that path along the street until it finally reached the bushes 85 feet down the street.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting because it seems like there was rules that it had to follow. And I also think that it was intelligent, and that it was transdimensional, that it was moving through our dimension in between,
Yeah.
along its path through other destinations. But that was my I think probably at least one of my most significant experiences. So eventually I talked to, okay, so of the two properties, the neighbor on the right, older woman, alcoholic, nasty person. The neighbors on the left, really nice people. So a couple of days later, the neighbors, it was an older couple, and their daughter and her daughter were living with them at the time. And the older daughter, who was, I think, probably early 30s at the time, was outside, and I got along really well with all of them. And I was like, hey, I got to tell you something. And I told her, and I expected her to be shocked. And she said, oh, that was probably one of my patients following me home. I do hospice, and I get, when they pass away, a lot of times their spirits will come visit me. Well, I don't think it was. I don't think it was a human spirit. I think the shadow people are not human. I think they're transdimensional.
Right.
Yeah.
That are not human whatsoever. But she said that she often got ghosts at their home, and she started telling me about things that would happen at their home, like her daughter would put her shoes under the bed when she got home, and 10 seconds, 15 seconds later, they'd be in the closet. Lots of things being moved around the house, a lot of things. So eventually they were moving out of their house. I think it was about a year later. I asked them if I could do an investigation at their house, and they said yes. So they had found a place. They'd already moved out, and there was still a week until they had to get everything out. So I asked them if I could set up my equipment in their home for a couple of and do investigations at their house, and they said yeah. They gave me a key. So for 2 nights in a row, I set up video equipment in different parts of the home, and I was working. I'd set up the video equipment and then go home in the morning, pull out the equipment, bring it inside, and then I was on the third night. I was going to actually stay the night because I didn't have to work the next day. I was going to stay the night, and I was going to do a real investigation. And my wife tells me, I don't want you to go over there. And I said, why not? She said, well, I've been attacked the last 2 nights that you've been over there and set up your equipment.
Shit.
I'm like, what do you mean attacked? She said, well, the first night that you were over there, I was laying in bed and I felt something pushing me down on the bed and I couldn't move. And then the second night, this basically the same thing happened, but this time I couldn't breathe, and I was afraid that I was going to
Pass out
be
or
able to
die.
breathe and die.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me before? And I can't remember what her explanation was. And I said, well, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I'll make sure it doesn't happen. She's like, yeah, you're gonna make sure it doesn't happen because you're not gonna go over there. I said, no, I'm going over there. but I'll make sure that it, I'll make sure that it doesn't happen.
Cleanse.
Like, you don't know how to do that. You can't do that. I'm like, I'll figure it out. She's like, you can't do that. You don't know how to do that. I'm like, no, trust me, I'll take care of it. So I went over to the house, and I'd never done anything like this before, and I went way over the top. So I kind of started thinking about this thing before I went over there, and I had this idea in my head, and I started off with, my name is Samuel Vance Tourville. I am a child of God, a son of Adam, a descendant of Adam, a son of Christ. And I made this big long speech, and I command all, and I listed everything I could think of, all dark spirits, dark entities, dark consciousnesses, negative energy, and I made up like this whole big list of things. And then I said, I command, I can't remember the exact words, but it was like, I command that you cannot enter onto my property.
Right.
You cannot disturb my family. You cannot attack my family. And then, and this was a mistake now I realize, but at the end of it, I said, I bind you to this home.
Oh, no.
Oops. So within 5 or 10 seconds of me saying that, bang, the door inside the house, right? One of the bedroom doors, bang. I'm like, ooh. And then about 20 seconds of that, and I actually have this on tape, the front door, right? So earlier in that evening, I forgot to say this part, but earlier in that evening, as I was starting to set up my equipment, the old man showed up. He still had a ton of stuff in the house, and he was supposed to have been getting it out. I thought he had just given up on it. But he was like, oh, I still got a bunch of stuff here. And I'm like, crap, man, I'm wanting to set up my stuff. So for 2 hours between like 11 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm working as hard as I can, like packing up as much stuff and filling this guy's truck as fast as I can with everything that he says he wants out of the house. And I'm working my ass off to get this, completely fill up his truck, right? And then he goes. So whenever anything unusual happens, there's two sides of thought that I have immediately. Part is the logical side that says, okay, let's debunk this. Let's figure out if there's a logical explanation. Right. The other side says, wow, what if this is something unusual? And I try to figure out, if it's unusual, what it could be. So part of my thought was, hey, this was this dark spirit trying to get out. And the other part was, no, this is the old man trying to get in. So I went to the door and I opened up the door, and of course there's nobody there. His truck isn't there. There's nobody walking away or running away. It was that dark entity, that dark spirit.
It was outside.
Manipulating that doorknob, trying to get out.
No. Wow.
And I was excited, and I was like, oh, wow, man, that is incredible. I got the evidence, right? Because I had several things running. And then I got exhausted. Like my energy just drained out of me, and I wanted to stay at that house so bad and continue the investigation. I had a ghost box that I was going to use. That was the only thing I hadn't done before. I had video cameras and tape recorders running before, but I didn't have a ghost box. I was going to use the ghost box, and I was exhausted. And I know part of it was that I was working, and that I, worked my butt off to get that guy's stuff packed up and get out of there. But I think there was more to it. I think my energy was drained by this dark entity, or I used a lot of my energy in that incantation.
Right.
But I went home, and my wife was not disturbed that night, and he never was disturbed again after that.
Nice.
No, you did it.
You bound it to the house.
To the house.
Yeah, and then
the poor new people there.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's what I worry about is who took over the house. But it was after that I took the trip to South Africa, and my ex had the experience with the old woman's voice in the garage, and I was like, hey, don't worry about this. I got this. I'll get rid of it. I found the entity over there. I'll banish this one. No problem. I've got it, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that same thing. Maybe tone it down a little bit. I don't want
Just don't bind it
right
to the
into
house.
detail that I did. Right?
Don't swing so hard.
Yeah, exactly. And so I go in there and I start, and I'm scared to death. I'm shaking. My voice is shaking. I'm cold. I'm shivering. I'm scared to death. And I'm like, I finish, and I'm like, that didn't work. And I come inside the house. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I wasn't scared like that when I was at the other home.
Right.
I'm like, okay. I was psyched up when I went over to that other place, right? I was mad that my wife had been attacked.
Right.
I was pumped up. It was my first time I was going to do this, and I had this confidence, and I was like, you just didn't prep yourself enough for this. So I kind of did like a brief meditation. I wasn't quite into the meditation at the time yet, but I kind of not really meditated, but I just kind of calmed and centered myself. And I went back into the garage and I started, and I'm hit with this overwhelming fear, and my voice is shaking, and I'm like, oh man. And I finished, but again, I'm like, wow, that did not work.
Wow.
I'm like, what is going on here? What is in this garage?
Yeah.
And so this time I really sat down, and I centered myself, and I went back over what I'd done at the other house. I was like, you can do this. You have to go in with confidence. And I really, this time I really grounded myself, and I really just kind of pumped myself up and and prepared myself. And this time I went in and I shouted it, and I could feel the difference, like in the projection of my voice. Like I was putting this time, like the first time, which I had kind of forgotten, I was projecting my power through my voice. I don't know really any other way to describe it,
Right.
but projecting my power through my voice. And when I finished, I didn't have that fear come over me. And when I finished, I felt that the room wasn't as heavy, right?
Yeah.
The garage wasn't as heavy. Like I went in there, and it's dark because we had all the windows were covered up, and mostly covered up. There was a little bit of light, but it was mostly dark. And I had the door closed because I didn't want anything sneaking into the house. And but that heaviness that was in there, it really did dissipate, and I knew I had done it right.
Nice.
Kind of an interesting thing, the idea of projecting power through my voice. I was at a UFO watch in Placerville at someone's house a few years ago, and it was the second time I had been there, and we had seen stuff both times. And there was a guy there that was a nice guy, but somebody that didn't really kind of think about everything, that he didn't really think things through when he did things. And somehow he got one of my
about me. Sorry.
No, it wasn't you. He was taller.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's more than 5'3".
I tease you about 5'3" because I'm actually 5'2".
Right.
But
Wow, you're tall, Matt.
I am.
you're a giant.
Yeah.
So this guy, I had given my laser pointer to somebody, and they had handed it to him. Well, before this, we had talked to everybody and said, look, if you're going to paint the laser up in the sky, make sure, 100% sure, that when you're pointing it up there, you're not pointing it at or near an airplane.
Right.
Like, make sure, do not point it if you're not quite sure. If you're not sure, you can point it in the general area and kind of like do a vector to it.
Right.
Don't get near it. And this guy,
Every time.
I could plainly see that this was an airplane that was going across.
And he pointed
he's pointing it right at it, and he's like, I think it's a UFO.
Give me
And
that.
I said, put the laser. I raised my voice, but I'm like, put it down. That's a plane. Put it down. And he's not. He's still pointing it. And I take a deep breath and I go, put the laser pointer down. And like everybody stopped talking. There's like 20 people outside. And everybody.
Right.
and he stopped. And it's funny, but I felt that power
Yeah.
going out from me. It wasn't just I was yelling. And I mean, I could have yelled louder. It wasn't necessarily the volume.
Yeah.
To me, it was like a raised voice, the parent raised voice at your
Yeah.
kid's volume. You're not yelling at them, but you got that raised voice volume. But the power that was projected through that,
Directed.
I had a couple people tell me afterwards, dude, like you raised the hair on my skin when you did that. It's like I stopped whatever I was doing.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to make sure that you weren't yelling at me.
Directed energy.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but yeah, that was my yeah, that was my first investigation, and apparently dark entity binding, which I really
Right.
hope
Very
those people
nice.
that were there now are okay.
We're gonna have to have Sam on again, aren't we?
Yeah.
Part 2.
Oh yeah, we're probably going way over time.
Yeah,
We didn't really talk that much about CE5.
Yeah, that's
That's
okay.
all right.
Well, let's do it again.
Part 2 coming.
We'll do a part 2.
I'd be happy to. Yeah,
All
and,
right.
but see, to me, so much of this is interconnected,
It is.
right?
I agree.
And I do have a lot of experiences to talk about, but so much of the paranormal and the extraterrestrial is interconnected because, and I'll just throw this out here real quick and finish it off. Extraterrestrial beings, I think for the most part, are transdimensional entities. And to me, a transdimensional entity is something that is not bound by
The laws.
linear time and
Yep.
three-dimensional space.
Yep.
I think some, obviously some aliens have physical bodies,
Right.
and they use machinery to transcend time and space. But I believe others that do have physical bodies and others don't have physical bodies are able with their consciousness to transcend physical time and space.
Yeah.
And I believe that we are being visited by a wide range.
Right.
And I'm really sorry. You know what? Let's definitely plan this again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll take whatever next spot you guys have open.
It's
Okay.
it's definitely. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.
And we'll dedicate it to CE5.
Okay.
We will.
I'll have some questions and stuff too.
Let's
So
wrap it up.
We'll keep it in
Thanks
direct.
for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome questions, comments, or requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook. Check out our website, alienprobe.net. Twitter and Instagram at alienprobepod. Like and subscribe at YouTube and preferably Rumble, because Rumble doesn't banner us when we mention that we don't like the COVID thing. Sam, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming
Yes,
on. We'll do
thank
another
you.
one. Let's schedule it.
Yeah, definitely.
See you next time.
All right.